He could be sly and he could be silly, couldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
He kills me. Some of the vocals. He didn't love his own voice, though, did he?
And you know what? And I would probably say this even if my dad were here. He's no longer here. God rest his soul. But my dad used to tell Jimmy he couldn't sing.
That'll do it.
And so, you know, when Dad says you can't do something, you kind of think, oh, okay, well, maybe I can't do it, you know. So he would always say, you can't sing, you can't sing. And when Jimmy had headed over to London, and he called home and he said, you know, I'm on my way, I'm going to make it. You know, they're changing the spelling of my name to J-I-M-I, and I'm going to start singing. And then my dad starts laughing. And I could, you know, I'm in the room when this conversation is going on. And so he goes, oh, okay. And he goes, hey, he goes, the rest of them are hollering. Kind of speaking of Bob Dylan, really. He's like, they're all hollering, so I'm going to holler along with the rest of them. But he had like a really rhythmic hollering and a really soulful voice. And so I really think that maybe like singing in the way my father thought of singing, you know, really crooning, kind of Frank Sinatra.
style,
No, that
yeah.
wasn't Jimmy, but he did well rhythmically with his own guitar playing.
He did. His vocal, to me, was as fluid and melodic and natural as his guitar playing was. So what a combination, what a marrying for me of probably the best example of someone who sounded so natural at both.
Yes.
It's difficult to sing and play.
It is, and I think sometimes, though, it's difficult, too, for another artist to sing while a guitar player is playing, because they don't always know where the guitar player is going,
competitive
too.
and
So, yeah,
confusing.
So he was able to put it all together.
So you touched on Noel is no longer with us, Mitch is no longer with us, Buddy is no longer with us. I got the pleasure of meeting two of those three great musicians. There's only one left. From speculation or from your own conversations with Billy Cox, the great bassist from Band of Gypsies, what a unique position for him to be in, and how does that make him feel, do you think?
You know, I've hung out with Billy quite a bit, and he has said he feels alone sometimes because all his friends from his musical bands are gone. I think definitely all the people that you mentioned were really lost when Jimmy died and were trying to find themselves for many years. Billy has kind of found his voice because he didn't think that he could sing either, so now he sings on our tour, and you know, he has his own life. So he rides Harleys and took that up kind of, you know, later in life, and you know, we still love having him around. I think in many ways I can see why he and Jimmy were friends from the Army, because Jimmy's mannerisms and Billy's mannerisms are really similar. And I once said to Billy, I can see why Jimmy was drawn to you, or you to him, because you remind me so much of my dad. And he goes, oh, we used to say that all the time, how our dads are so much alike. So yeah, it's just fun having him around. And you know, he loves doing what he's doing, and he still can do what he's doing, and he's taking care of himself. And so, you know, we go forward and have more tribute concerts that coincide with our releases, of course.
And we're so happy and lucky in Canada and fortunate to have the tour here now, presently, and you're in the midst of it. And the players, Johnny Lang's a favorite, and Kenny Wayne, and guys from Los Lobos, and Chris from Double Trouble, Stevie Ray's band, and on and on and on. And Billy, they must have such reverence for Billy being sort of the main focus and key representation of the legacy of Jimmy from the era. How do they feel about him? How do they respond to him?
I think that they do. They pay great respect and great honor, because not only did he know Jimmy from early on, from the service years, and played with him from those pre-experienced bands, and of course with the experience in the Band of Gypsies, there is great reverence for Billy and the fact that he's still here. And there was great reverence for Mitch when he was playing. And there was a huge sadness and a huge void when he left, because as quirky as Mitch was, he had a great sense of humor. And you know, he was very close to Jimmy, and it affected him deeply when Jimmy died. He was kind of lost. And so to be part of the whole experience again, and that was fun for him. It was fun for the guys, and they all, you know, loved to hear the stories. Last night we were doing interviews, and you know, Ernie Isley's on our tour, and of course Jimmy played with his older brothers and stayed at his house for a short stint. So he talked about all those stories of Jimmy, you know, kind of hanging out in the guest room and playing and eating dinner and all of the kind of normalcy that you would have, but yet not really realizing who this person was going to become, you know, at the time, and you're a kid. So it's really kind of the roots of the fruits, you know, our whole group. It's like everybody has a connection, whether they met Jimmy or saw a concert or just experienced the music. It's just different facets of loving Jimmy, really.
Tell me about the movie in terms of where can people see it? Just by getting the DVD, or will it come out to theaters?
You know, we are going to do some short runs, like in New York and various places for like a one-day showing.
Yeah.
We did show it in Seattle on September 18th, which marked the 40th anniversary of Jimmy's passing at EMP. We're going to show it again in Seattle. It did air on the Bio channel, and it has aired a couple times on the Bio or A&E. So that's where they'll be able to find it. But November 16th, they'll have their own copy, and it's wonderful to see, though, theatrically, like on a big screen, because on your TV, it doesn't matter like how big your screen is, unless you have a movie theater in your house, to really see it and experience the music and, you know, the surround sound, and it's definitely something to add to your collection and for you to view, because it's Jimmy as people don't know him. It's not an actor playing him. It's his words, and it's what he had to say to the world.
Right. Well, I'm pleased as well, and I applaud you and the organization for coming out with different packages. You don't have to buy everything. You can get the disc in the movie, you can get the highlight CD, you can get a variety of things to serve kind of everyone's budget, because there's a lot of material here.
There's a lot of material, and we realize it does get spendy, especially when you're talking about 5 discs. And, you know, not everyone, can afford that. But of course, if you can, it's like, you know, you get the booklets, and we don't ever skimp on the photos that are in the booklets. And so that's why a lot of people don't necessarily just download the music, because you'll miss out on the whole packaging, which is part of the whole collection and the whole vibe of kind of the touring thing. You know, when we went to concerts, you always wanted the touring book, and you wanted all the photos and everything that you could kind of collect.
There's nothing greater than listening while you're digging through the packaging.
And reading the history. John McDermott, my Kellogg manager, he is a wealth of information, and he's of course a great writer, and has really been kind of the all-knowing, all-telling historian of Jimmy. And really, if you want to know anything about Jimmy historically, John's the person. You know, he will sometimes, we're in the studio, and Eddie will say, "Oh, I remember this day, we were at the record plant." John's like, "No, that wasn't at the record plant." And it's like, you know, they'll go back and forth, and John will say, and then after a while, he's kind of reviewing what happened that day, and Eddie goes, "Oh, you're right, that was at," you know. And so then it's funny, I go, it's really kind of sad that you would even argue with John, because even though he wasn't there, he knows, you know, from his reading.
Yeah, Eddie Kramer, what a producer, but there's gaps for all of us.
He always says the 60s were good to him, so if you remember the 60s, you weren't there, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, no, Eddie is a delight to work with, and you know, he was, of course, there with Jimmy, and Jimmy chose him as his engineer, and so consequently, we chose him to continue to do the posthumous releases, and he's like, it's like sitting with a history teacher, and he does have great stories to tell, and lots of memories, and lots of stories, lots of photos to show. He's actually unearthed some more photos that he had taken of Jimmy that he thought weren't very good, but through technology now, as we know it, he's able to make the photos more clear and more crisp. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he's like a historian. He is in that regard in terms of Jimmy's music, but he's also like a 5-year-old child, because he's still really excited about it. That's what you want out of someone who's reliving and bringing to the forefront the artistry of Jimi Hendrix, as you do so well. It's nice to see you, as I said.
Thank you.
Nice to see your smile. You're obviously so into this.
Oh, I am. I mean, this is my passion. It's not a job. It's not a career. It's really all about Jimmy. It's really about keeping his legacy and his music alive and as fresh today as it was 40 years ago. It really is timeless, you know. The Bible says there's nothing new under the sun, but what Jimmy was talking about when it comes to wars and people and relationships, there's really, you know, it's about today too. It's about the 21st century as much as it was back then.
Clearly. Two more things. One, what's the best place, what's the best source if people want to go and learn more about Jimmy, obviously other than this release? Website?
JimiHendrix.com. And then also John McDermott and I put out a book. It's the Illustrated Hendrix book, which you could find on our website. And it's really, my father collected and saved everything that was important. And so drawings and handwritings and lyrics and childhood drawings, he saved those. And so we recreated that in a booklet. And it's like, you know, you can pull things out, and it's a real active book that you can get a hold of. And then, of course, the other thing that we are working on is a park in Jimmy's name.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah, it's in Seattle, and the city has deemed almost 6 acres of this land that goes up against the Northwest African American Museum. Sorry, it is just about a couple miles south of Garfield High School, where Jimmy went to high school, and we are actually raising money for this park that will reflect Jimmy's life and music, and so stepping stones. The Native Americans are donating a totem pole that will reflect Jimmy's heritage in the Cherokee Nation. And so stepping stones, butterfly gardens, lots of flowers and trees. And
Spaceships?
depends on how much money we can raise.
Yeah. Who was more into space stuff than Jimmy?
Well, you know, it's funny that you say that, because, yeah, Jimmy was really into spaceships, and so was my dad. You know, like he really would love to look at the moon, you know, at night. And one time Jimmy said, if a spaceship came down, would you go in? And my dad goes, yeah, I would. I'd want to see, you know, what's on the other side. And Jimmy goes, oh, I'll definitely go in. So yeah, they wanted to see what was on the other side. And you know, when my dad passed away, which was in '02, that's what he kept saying. I've spent enough time in this world, and I want to see what's on the other side now. So.
That's cool to be at that place where you're accepting of the fact that it's coming and you're embracing it.
Well, yeah, you know, he's lived till he was 82, and not that, I mean, I would love to have had him longer. My grandmother lived to be 100, but he was just ready to go. Jimmy, you know, losing him at 27 was quite a shock to everyone, and our family was never, you know, ever the same without him, and I don't think the world really was, because, you know, here we are, like you say, 40 years later, 4 years of music that he created as the experience. Still, we're finding unreleased material. In 2012, which he will turn 70, had he been alive, we'll have Miami Pop to release, and that is something that, unless you were there at the concert, you haven't seen it. It's never been released, but the film footage is amazing. It's pristine. It's an amazing show. So
good.
That'll come out in 12, and then we have the Royal Albert Hall that will come out in 2011.
Brilliant. Anytime you're back in Toronto, come say hello.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. On behalf of Legends, good luck
Thank
with the tour
Thank
and the
you.
releases. Such a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks so much.
Janie Hendrix, Jimmy's little sister. Cheers.
Explore Music wears English Laundry apparel.